This particular set, there's two sets in this part of the evening. This set is presented in two parts. In the first section, our speaker readers are Lynn Martin and Lanny Wright, who have both taken hospice trainings. And Lynn has, for 2.5 years now, facilitated the bereaved parents support group. Lynn reads about letting go, and so does Lanny, in a more particular sense related to her mother's dying. Then Lynn will read again a poem, this time, remembering her father. The second half of this set will feature Lori Schreiner and Greg Burnell, who I'll introduce further in their part of the set.
Letting go. Psychologists, New Agers, 12-steppers, and people you meet on the street all say it. Letting go is the first step toward healing. Autumn lets go into winter, adolescence into maturity, sorrow into joy. Hospice helps the terminally ill to let go of life and enter the sleep from which no one awakens. We are continually letting go of dreams, illusions, toys, unlived stories, the worn out, no longer possible, and the no longer working. But what if you are always seeing the first two-wheeler bike you ever had leaning against the co-op wall? Or what if your best friend has just died and you see her strolling the common, her shadow touching the bandstand as she walks by? Or waving at you as he hurries to the door of Brown and Roberts? What if an endless procession of the young who died of AIDS appears in your dreams nightly? It isn't as if I haven't tried. I have written goodbye 100 times. I have joined others in rituals and memorial services. I've cried endless tears, and then I get up and greet the new day each morning with anticipation and wonder. I'm grown up enough to know losing a bike and your youthful self is not the same as losing a friend. It is easy to imagine letting go of a red balloon, as easy as opening your hand to the sky a blue heartbeat away. It is easy to imagine a leaf kidnapped by the West River and tumbling its way to the sea. But I can't seem to let go of love. Memory insists. One of my favorite poets, Mary Oliver, says, to live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes, to let it go, to let it go. This is such wise, beautiful advice. Let go and love again is what it says to me. I long to do so, if only someone would tell me how. It's hard to let go of how grown up and proud I was as I raced through the streets on my big bike. It's difficult to recall my friend arriving, rain-spattered and laughing, to insist on a wet walk. Or a certain young man saying, they will find a cure and I will be its first miracle. He died 5 months later. If I knew how to stop these soft, caressing voices, letting go would be a cinch.
What the dead want. My mother took her time dying, which was okay with me. I wasn't ready for her to go when she had the stroke that changed her forever. I needed every minute of those final 2.5 years to wrap my mind around the notion that she would leave this earth, that she would leave me, that she would be the one who traveled away while I stayed home longing for her return. She didn't mind being sick. She hated the idea of being put in a nursing home, though. It was synonymous in her mind with being thrown out with the garbage. But she loved all the paid employees rubbing lotion onto her legs, readjusting her lap blanket, bringing her supper on a tray, and raising and lowering the back of her bed for her. People liked my mother. She was polite. She had a sense of humor about things. Most of her friends and family had died. Now it was nurses, technicians, aides, and therapists who came around to visit with her and see how she was doing. Emphysema was the killer. Her lung sacs were shutting down one by one, the pure blue oxygen no longer able to scrub the carbon dioxide from her blood. It was as if her body were locked in an idling car in a one-bay garage where the radio was too loud to hear the insidious hum of the motor. Everybody smoked, she said. We didn't know it was bad for you. My mother died in stages defined by place. She stayed home for the first long year, supported by neighbors and strangers, and by my willingness to drive back and forth from Vermont to New York on the weekends. These drives gave me time to grieve. Sometimes I'd cry all the way back to Vermont. The first year was hard. I had to make decisions every week based on too little information, often conflicting. I let go of trying to figure things out in my head and navigated by gut. I hired and fired people, made my presence known at the nurses' station. I took a hospice course, joined a meditation group. I learned about blood gases and Lasix. I saw signs and omens everywhere. Each season came and went as if it might be her last. This seemed to affect my heart, which began beating like a drum, and a chest cracked and bruised by rough handling. I was torn open so wide I couldn't stop anything from coming in or going out. I had no barriers, no protection. Armor melted, shields were misplaced, never to be found again. At night, when I should have been resting, I wandered the town absorbing sorrow like a sponge until daybreak found me on my knees, too weary to move. I prayed for something to shift. Only her death could save me. Only her death could save her. It would come when I could take the misery no more and left me trembling with guilty relief. It would be years before I understood how much my mother loved me and how much I loved her. Our love was not the hearts and flowers kind. We loved the best we could. We put it out there and hoped the other would see it for what it was, love in all its various costumes, trying to shine even as the curtain was falling and the audience was standing to go, but it was only intermission. She moved into my little den for a few months, where she lived upright in her green velour platform rocker. She couldn't breathe lying down. Every few days, I'd vacuum up the flaked-off skin, the food that didn't quite make it from plate to mouth. I'd dig out the pills that had rolled under the seat cushion. That chair contained so much of my mother, the two were becoming indistinguishable. Then she had some seizures. I watched helplessly as my mother went stiff as a board, her teeth bared. The doctor stabilized her on anti-seizure medicine served up in cherry cough syrup. She hated it. A new battle began, but now I was fighting for her well-being, not my own. She had a good year in Holton home, seizures mostly at bay, her breathing buoyed by the high-proof stuff delivered in green metal tanks that she took with her everywhere. She made new friends who played simple card games, then things seesawed again, and she spent the whole summer in and out of 2 East. The nice nurses coming in to sit with her and watch TV at night, sharing home-baked cookies from a tin and pictures of their children. Some days I'd put her in her wheelchair and we'd go outside. I'd push the chair and steer with one hand and haul the oxygen tank on its little trolley with the other. We'd go around the flower bed so she could see what was in bloom, then down the path under the big trees out front where we could watch the traffic on Canal Street. So many people whose mothers were not dying, going about their ordinary lives. And we'd gaze across the street at the white towers of Eden Park, where she would soon go to spend her final months. Yes, it was the hated nursing home in the end, though we preferred to call it a private hospital. Her room on the 3rd floor looked out into the canopy of graceful trees. I could sit there and watch the birds at the window feeders, note the leaves when they stopped making chlorophyll and began to revert to the yellow and reds they were born with. This is what happens to humans at the end, too. We come home to our true colors. Day after day, I stared up at the sky with its ready complement of shape-shifting clouds, and I followed the light as it left the red brick hospital for the eternal flanks of Mount Wetaskikat. Mom sat in her green velour platform rocker with her back to it all. Her lifelong interest in nature seemed to have wound down. Her body was a cage getting smaller. The door out had long ago rusted shut. It was a long, slow walk from the green velour chair to the bathroom and back. Her hands and feet were always cold. Sometimes I'd slide into bed next to her just to warm her up. I came to know her body as well as she once knew mine. All our differences began to fade. At the end, it was just her and me again, as it was in the beginning. I was still too blind to see what we'd had from the moment she first looked down into my eyes and I looked up into hers. This energy called love was bigger than both of us. It grew so large we could no longer see its shape, and maybe that's what confused us into thinking we both needed something more from one another. After she died, I became afraid. I thought she was angry at me for not measuring up. When I thought of her, I felt overwhelmed, guilty. I stopped going to the place where I had scattered her ashes on Easter Sunday morning. But then a miracle of sorts took place. She came to me in the night. She was so beautiful, young again, all shimmering with golden light and emanating love like a god. My heart leaped in my chest to see her again, and I began to cry. "Don't cry," she said. "I understand everything now. I forgive you, and I only ask one thing, that you forgive me too." And then I woke up. She was gone, and I was all alone, sitting up in bed, tears running down my cheeks. I knew it would be a long time until I saw her again. What the dead ask of us is easy, that we forgive them and love them fully with every fiber of our beings. Why not? It's all they ever wanted anyway. Isn't that what we all want?
The title of this piece is from a poem by Jane Kenyon. I am the one whose love overcame you. You took the train to New York City, that exotic land across the river, every day. In the backyard, up against the cement of someone's garage, you planted tomato plants, so brave as they searched for the sun. On my birthday, a gift wrapped by your own hands, no turning it over to Mom as a woman's job. You were a working man who could dance like Fred Astaire, twirling Mom across the floor while I watched, astonished. You could argue for hours over anything. Your entire reputation hung on being right. The teenage me was a nightmare of contradiction. Your final volley always, I read it in a book, so it must be true. Christmas meant hours of hanging tinsel just so. Your patience put me to sleep, totally unprepared for the glory of the finished tree. My father has been dead 35 years. Is that the telephone? Is that the doorbell?
The second half of this set features Lori Schreiner and Greg Burnell. Lori will read Paint Me in Vermont, in memory of her early partner, Jessie Solomon, followed by Greg Brunell singing his song, That's All I Wanted You to Know, for his father, who is a local potter. Greg will be accompanied by Jason Kerber on clarinet. Then Lori will read For Amy, in memory of her sister, Amy Schreiner, who died suddenly at the age of 42. The reading is also for her brother-in-law, Jack Canonico, who died a year later. Lori and Greg were two of 7 or 8 people who came to a support group a number of years ago at Hospice. Also in the group was Lori Bayer, whose permission I have to mention her name in this story. On this particular morning, her girls had been frightened by something. She had girls 10 and 12 or 13. And she brought them to the hospice office, which was the only day of our 8 meetings that they came. And they were lovely, and we set them up with art materials and books in the library. Into the group came Greg with his guitar that day, and he had mentioned that he'd been working on a song, but he hadn't told us anything else about it, and that day he brought his guitar and said that he was ready, maybe, for that group to play it. Lori said, because she was there, because the father of her girls had died very suddenly, could I bring the girls up into the room? Her oldest girl had just been learning guitar from her dad. And he said, of course. We all said, of course. And the girls came up. Greg sang the song that you're going to hear. We all really enjoyed it. And Greg didn't remember this until I told him a few days ago, but he showed the older girl a few chords, and they spent a little time with the guitar. So, Lori and Greg.
The first and last stanza of this poem Jesse wrote, and I wrote the stanzas in between for him. He was one of the early deaths from AIDS. Paint me in Vermont. Paint me in Vermont on flaxen canvas with dreams falling across face and hair, auburn catching sunspots in between trees, and luminous lakes cool blue like a forever day. Painting Jesse in Vermont these 5 years later, at 19 we slid down an icy hill on red plastic lunch trays borrowed from the cafeteria, plastic bags rubber banded over our matching fry boots. We lay flat in the snow at the bottom, our arms cradled each other, laughing, watching the rise of a winter moon. SUNY at Purchase, class of 76. Before we knew making love might kill us, before we knew there was a disease already making claims, I still dream of you. Paint me in Vermont, always in water, canvas with flaxen dreams, and sunspots auburn falling like a forever day.
People say that life goes on. Well, who am I to say they're wrong? But you were here and now you're gone. That's all I wanted you to know. When I was young, you'd sing to me. Your voice was strong and it was sweet. It didn't seem like very long. Oh, I miss you so. That's all I wanted you to know. That's all I wanted you to know. I never thought that you would go. Though these words will never show, you'll always be a part of me. That's all I wanted you to know. Well, dust to dust is what they say. Dust and water gives us clay. If you were here with me today, oh, I'd tell you so. That's all I wanted you to know. And now it's time to say goodbye. But all I do is sit and cry. I'll never know the reasons why. Oh, I can't let go. That's all I wanted you to know. That's all I wanted you to know. You gave us roses in the snow. For all the things that come and go, you are my father, I am your son, and you could only be the
one. For Amy. Time heals all wounds, they say, and they are idiots. Ask anyone who has lost a husband in a plane crash, or a child to a wicked wave, or a little sister to a broken rhythm of the heart. I didn't wash her sheets for weeks. Was it months? Or her pillowcase, the one that cradled her head when she came to visit a week before she died? So what is there to say? Nothing really, except this, an endless keen that never brings her back.
sequence in our final set this evening will be first Wendy Bayless reading After Susan Left Him for her friend Chris, followed by Aileen Powers, whose piece is based on an experience she had following the death of her husband, Adam de la Barre, who was 47 when he died of a rare bone marrow cancer, Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia. Next Saturday, May the 22nd, is the 7th anniversary of his death. Our last poem of the night will be Wendy's Visiting My Sister, read in memory of her sister, E.J. And then Jenny Reichman remembers her father by singing her compositions Misplaced Cowboy and Full Circle, accompanied by Jeff Kelleher. Listen for the Red River Valley refrain, because at the end, we're all going to join in singing.
After Susan left him, my favorite green dress twirled out against the humid Cambridge days that hot summer. Far away in Georgia, a possum floated in the pool of the rich uncle's house. Sadly, over the wires came a distant story of another divorce, stealthy theft of every lamp and switch plate unscrewed from the inner walls of the house. The warning bell of familial instability tolled unheeded. We spoke softly. Both left behind in Boston, we yearned for respect. We shared words of travel that invoked the absent other, down in the wine cellar, out in the kitchen, after my sister's wedding, ironic, gently spiced with memories and wit. Now I cry for three things: our cautious investigation of the hidden, needing special words, cadence of Spanish and Yiddish, like our immigrant grandparents, keeping secrets. Your affectionate irony. You knew so much, yet recognized your own path led away from worldly competence. Your indulgent mocking of domesticity. You always accompanied food with reverence. Ah, this vineyard has a hint of limestone, as you opened a treasured bottle against the heat, releasing dark fruit and sweet strength. You dreamt of children, daily pleasures, a white fence around a house filled with admiration and books, saxophone riffs and warmth. Did you ever think about marrying him? My daughter asks, peeking out our kitchen window. Will you capture your own young daughter laughing up from my perennial garden, revolving with your camera, endlessly patient and proud? Oh yes, sweetheart, but never about burying him.
The blessed event. My late husband, Adam, had an incredible sense of humor. He wooed me with it, used it to ease our way through his fight with cancer, and left it as part of his legacy when he died. How else could I explain the baby snake he sent to comfort me in my grief? Granted, snakes were also one of his big loves. I didn't know this when we met. But over time, Adam shared stories of pets such as a blue jay, flying squirrel, and assorted reptiles he cared for while growing up in West Virginia, Texas, and Massachusetts. Friends said visiting his childhood bedroom was like visiting a zoo. Then as an adult, Adam became a falconer and kept hawks for 10 years. He was as fascinated by animal behavior as I was by human behavior. But snakes? Weren't they slithering, slimy, treacherous, and evil? Didn't even the best researched nature programs always cue up the menacing music when snakes appeared? I discovered a whole different reality, however, when I ended up sharing our home office with glass cages and plastic boxes containing an ever-increasing variety of pythons. The snakes were dry, not slimy, and watching their gliding movements soon became fascinating instead of terrifying. Slowly, I learned to hold them and be dazzled by the incredible beauty of their skin patterns. Different types demonstrated varied behaviors. Adam taught my stepson and me history, geography, and biology as he shared his vast knowledge of the snakes. He loved sharing his enthusiasm with others as well. Soon he started presenting programs locally at the library, the Sunday school program of my church, and at area preschools. It wasn't unusual to find friends, such as Adam's music group, crowding into our little study to learn about these fascinating creatures. Several folks, including me, faced down terror that dated back to our childhoods and came through to the other side under Adam's gentle tutelage. As Adam became sicker with cancer through the winter and spring of 2003, our friend Dave helped care for Adam's snakes. When Dave discovered a clutch of eggs under one female, we called Adam at the hospital to get directions on how to set up the incubator he had built. Adam died in May before the eggs hatched out, and when they did, Dave delivered the sad news that they'd all seemed to have gone bad. We collected their remains, and I brought them to the dump. That night, nearly 1 month after Adam died, I cried so hard for him that I collapsed on the living room floor. Adam, come back, I sobbed. Just come back. I can't take this. 2 days later, a sliver of movement caught my eye as I walked into the study. It was tiny, thinner than my finger, and only a bit longer, but I knew it was a baby snake. Dave was incredulous. So was I. The only explanation was that the snake had hatched and crawled unseen out of the incubator as we were checking the eggs. Somehow, it survived in the room for 2 days. It was so small that the only way I could have found it was the way I did, walking in at the exact moment that it was leaving, seemingly by chance. It was my sister Claudette who connected the snake to my sobbing plea to Adam just a few days before. "What did you name the snake? And are you keeping it for a pet?" she emailed. "Ha ha. Adam has a heavenly sense of humor sending the snake to remind you of him. Just be glad he wasn't into tarantulas." Since little Peach's appearance, Adam's humor lives on. Friends chuckle every time they see me caring for my pet snake. Some absolutely roared with laughter in the early months when I'd pull Peach's baby photos out of my purse. The hospice bereavement group leader had told us to keep an open mind about unusual events and connections that seem to happen after our loved one's death. So I have. But I never would have expected the healing that would come in the form of my miracle baby snake. Having been married to Adam, I should have known better.
Visiting my sister. The last time I stepped into an airplane and circled over the city, the bridge, and the bay, my older sister lay dying in her living room on a special bed, still discussing her future vacations. After chemo, when I find another job, still fussy about what flavors of cat food to buy. She sat gray-faced in the car, handing the money to me as though I were riding my bike to Napoli's corner store for a teenage evening baking session, directing me, the mother of 3, how to wash her sheets and pull the queen-sized edges straight on a bed that would never know conception, betrayal, or divorce. Still talking about my next trip. Bring your oldest. She'll love the half-timbered Tudor library. Her own return to New England with favorite furniture and jewelry. Setting up a tiny apartment until spring. My envy of her freedom, her favored status, the first Jewish boyfriend, her muscular steel mill lover, all those firsts in the 70s were melted in guilty survivorship. My tears blurred the rocky coastline and melted the edges of the small rectangular window. The voice in my mind that always prays as the plane climbs, unbelievably, against all odds, this time wept. I will never return, San Francisco will always mean death to me. Not tiled roofs, steep hillsides, Chinese cricket cages sold on streets with Spanish colonial names. The waves rolled inexorably inward like the gray walls of the hospital parking garage, where I got to drive her Porsche at long last, hating every minute of that responsive pedal beneath my foot. This was not the sunlit dream of a frozen New Englander. My older sister grasped my hand with her own cold hand. She squeezed hard, the frightened child I had never seen, as the serious doctor, no longer joking about fast cars, said words that made no sense. Maybe, don't know, sometimes months. He never said, say goodbye. As we circled and lifted, it amazed me that the plane could leave Earth with the weight of the stone in my chest, grinding my happy childhood to death with the tears of the first mourner.
My father was a misplaced cowboy. He only rode a horse but twice a year. And he only rode a horse but twice a year. Hunting for just a stubborn antelope and deer. Hunting for turquoise ring on his finger. He was a dedicated fan of John Wayne. He was a dedicated fan of John Wayne. Over the door that put those Winchester shotguns hanging over the door that put those Hollywood shotguns to my father was a misplaced cowboy. He loved the songs of Hank Williams and Merle. He loved the songs of Hank Williams and as I was sitting on his knee. Sang some serenades for Daddy as I was sitting on his knee. Lonesome serenades for daddies and his story. There were harmonicas and fiddles in his story. Harmonicas and fiddles, but the chords were just too hard or too strange. The guitar, but the chords were just too hard or too strange for a mechanical. I have heard people say you are leaving. We will miss your bright eyes and sweet smile. We will oh, they say your bright eyes and sweet sunshine. Oh, they say brightened our path, the sunshine. That brightened our pathway wide. I picked up that guitar when I was 13. And the chord book from the closet's bottom shelf. And the chord book from the closet's bottom shelf. Taught myself saw my father smiling to himself. Saw my father misplaced cowboy. He put his roots down in the soil he'd always known. He put his roots down in the soil he'd always known. Montana and Wyoming. Once on a vacation to Montana and Wyoming. Thought he never looked so much the only son of a plumber and a housewife. He was the apple of his older sister's eye. He was the apple of his older sister's eyes. Built on a parcel of the best land through a lifetime. Had a parcel of the orchard and the workshop. Had his dogs and a daughter and a workshop. Had his dogs and a daughter and a wife. In a perfect world, traded us. In a perfect world, I think he would have picked a cowboy. Come and sit by my side if you love me. Come and stay by my side if you love me. Do not just remember the river valley, just and the one there who loves you valley, and the one there who loves you so true, the one there who loves you so true. I wrote this song just shortly after my father died, maybe about a year. I wrote this song just shortly after my father died, maybe about a year. I wrote a song some years ago. I wrote a song right after some years ago. Father died. About losing what is precious, about losing that's left what is precious. I was hungry then for freedom. I was hungry then for freedom. I knew that I could not be trusted to know what I was running for. To know what I walking on the ocean, standing in the airport, walking on the ocean. That song was just my way of saying goodbye. That song was just my way of saying goodbye. But that song was how I cried. But that song was how I cried. I did my best to stake my claim. I did my best to stake my claim. It meant so much to me to struggle. It meant so much to me to struggle. Through all the things I laughed as I was leaving, and tried to cough from time to time as I was leaving. Had a sudden bitter feeling. Had a sudden bitter feeling of looking for. It's burned into my memory. His face as he lay down. Burned into my memory. Nothing I could do could change his mind. Nothing I could do could change his mind. I had far too little time. And it turns me around to where I can barely move. And it turns me around to see my father's where I can barely move. We both failed to see my father's face and think what we both failed to do. A quiet man who loved his child. A quiet man watched who loved his child. He so gracefully released me. He so gracefully released me. I am learning to be grateful. I am learning to be grateful. Those words were seldom many. Those words were seldom proud of me. He was always proud of me. Come and sit by my side if you love me. Do not hasten to bid me adieu. Just remember the Red River Valley and the one there who loves you so true. You sound awesome. I have heard people say you are leaving. We will miss your bright eyes and sweet smile. Oh, they say you are taking the sunshine that brightened our pathway wide. Come and sit by my side. Come and sit by my side.